This is Ed Rep Radio, presented by Eastman Music Company. This is Ed Rep Radio, a podcast to bring you ideas and information from industry experts you can use on the road every day. Presented by Eastman Music Company, and I'm your host, Shane Duell. On this episode, as part of our series on understanding the world of string teachers, we are talking with Charles Laux, orchestra director at Alpharetta High School in Atlanta. Mr. Laux comes from a tremendous amount of experience across all grade levels, from beginner to collegiate. He hosts the Orchestra Teacher podcast. He's also a clinician for Eastman Strings and D'Addario. And today he shares his thoughts on the challenges of being an orchestra teacher, instrument preferences, how music stores can support teachers like him, and much more. Charles Laux, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
We talked a bit before we started speaking here in the recording about the fact that most ed reps who are out there on the road tend to be band people. And they all have to service string teachers in some level as an ed rep. Some have a lot of orchestra programs, some have a few. And what we're going to discuss today is what's important to a string teacher. And I think you're such a great person to talk to because not only are you a string teacher, and we'll learn more about your background, but you also have a podcast, and you talk to other orchestra teachers. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. It's called the Orchestra Teacher podcast. I started about a year and a half ago, I believe. It's been just amazing. We interview directors from all over the country, college professors, some people from the industry. I'm working on getting on there too. It's just a great way to share ideas, make other teachers feel at home, especially if you're in one of those districts where you're the only string teacher for miles.
Right.
So just trying to build that community, share ideas, and make everybody feel good about what we do and answer some questions. And it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll bet you really have a finger on the pulse of what the challenges are right now and in general for string teachers from all the people you've been talking to.
Right. The pandemic hit last year. It was definitely a difficult time and people weren't sure what to do. So it was just nice to be able to have some solid information from other teachers and realize that everybody's going through the same thing. It's been really nice to be able to relate with other people and just, like I said, share those ideas and situations so that, you can, for me, it's been very self-reflective as well.
Yeah. That's great. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about your background as a teacher?
Sure. This is my 25th year in education. I grew up east of Cleveland and went to Ohio University for my undergraduate. And as soon as I left there, I moved to Las Vegas, started teaching in the Clark County School District out there in Las Vegas at middle school. And I was there for 7 years. Then I relocated to Orlando, Florida. I taught high school there for 4 years. And then I decided to go back to get my doctoral degree, moving back to Ohio, going to Ohio State. I was in Ohio for 5 years, a year at Ohio State. And then I was back in the classroom and finished my coursework and things. And then I applied for a college teaching position, moved down here to Atlanta, where I currently am, was at Kennesaw State University for 4 years as the very first music education professor in strings. And started a string project and conducted the second orchestra there. And then after I was there for 4 years and on my way to getting tenure, I just realized that my heart was in the classroom and I wanted to come back really badly. So I took a job at Alpharetta High School, where I currently am. I'm in my 5th year there. And it's been an awesome experience, great students, great admin, amazing colleagues, and just a fantastic community. So very happy there, and I have 5 orchestras at Alpharetta. Yeah, and it's a wonderful program. I have a very diverse group of students ability-wise and a very diverse group of students SES-wise and everything else. So it's just, I love the diversity in terms of ability and in terms of culture and everything we have. Students who, struggle holding their instrument right and, getting a good sound, to students who are attending, Ivy League schools and conservatories and everything else. So, and everything in between, which is super nice to still be able to do that type of pedagogy, but also work on, really advanced literature as well.
Yeah. What a broad and varied background you come from. You've taught at really every level, haven't you?
I have. Yeah. When I was in Ohio, I did elementary too. And I've had a really great career and just been able to work with some amazing professors and amazing teachers and just establishing, a network of friends and colleagues in different places. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
That's great. And I imagine from the various grades you've taught and places you've taught and in the years you've put in, you've seen a lot of different things as an orchestra teacher, and you've seen a lot of different challenges come your way. And part of what I would like to talk to you about is for yourself and for the orchestra teachers you know around the country. What kind of day-to-day challenges do you feel are unique to being an orchestra teacher as opposed to, say, a band or a choir teacher?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is that we're not as widespread. So I believe maybe about 20% of the schools in the country have orchestra or a string program. And then there's that whole mindset of saying strings or saying orchestra, and I prefer to say orchestra because I think that equates a little bit more with band and with chorus or choir. As you say strings, you don't really talk about, you don't say voices, or you don't say, woodwind players or whatever. So we're talking about just I guess not legitimizing orchestra, but kind of bringing it to the same mental side. But the challenges are just definitely fewer shops, fewer experts in string repair. And so it's that could be a challenge. I mean, in the Atlanta area, we have a plethora of wonderful shops and vendors, but not every community has the expert or the luthier to be able to take care of the string instruments, in the best way possible. So I think those are some of the challenges, in general. But I really think, I've been fortunate to teach in some very great situations in our Atlanta metro area right now, and the Columbus area of Ohio had some great programs, and so did Orlando, and so did Las Vegas. So I've always been in communities that have had thriving programs. But as I travel and as I visit some other places, I realize that there's a lot of teachers out there that just don't have the support, the community, the resources to be able to draw from all the time. So a lot of teachers out there that are, whether in a more of a rural area or in an area where there's just not a lot of string programs, they crave the professional development. And they crave, being able to have some of that same attention that maybe the band or choir would get in their school.
So that's really interesting. So string teachers, it sounds like there's an opportunity with them for a music store who maybe is pretty band focused. And if they're in an area where there is an orchestra and there's no luthier maybe working for the store, or maybe the ed rep doesn't play a string instrument, maybe it sounds like there's an opportunity for those situations to really support that orchestra teacher as a store if they're not really getting into the orchestra side of things in the business anyways.
It is, and orchestra. I feel that orchestras are kind of on the rise, and there's just I think there's still a lot of unknown in certain places about what's required for maintenance and what's required for particularly the setup. That's the biggest thing. You could, in the band world, you can buy a Yamaha X model of whatever trumpet or whatever instrument, whatever brand it might be, and it's pretty much going to be the same. But with the string instruments, I mean, most of them are coming from overseas, China or whatever, and the shop and the care, the personalization of just making sure that the instrument is set up properly is probably the most important thing that string teachers and string players are looking for. But one of the things that I think in some areas is definitely lacking is that, making sure the bridge is cut properly and the feet fit right, and all of the appointments are there and accurate, because that makes or breaks the experience for the student. With a poorly set up instrument, it could be a really great instrument, but if the bridge is cut wrong, or the fingerboard needs work, or the pegs aren't fit right, then it just makes it miserable for both the teacher and the student. Hard to learn on, and then hard to keep in tune, hard to get a lot of good work done in class, because you're spending a lot of time just tuning and adjusting the instrument, and it's not it's not stable. So
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That sounds like a unique challenge to string teachers. That
Definitely. Definitely.
it's not just pull a violin out of the box and here you go. It actually
Right.
needs some attention. What kind of things are important to you in a setup? What do you look for in a good instrument for, say, your younger players who are maybe on a rental program with a
Well,
music store?
even a rental can be a decent instrument. Always looking for ebony fittings and the pegs and fingerboard and that. And there's so much out there, particularly online, where students will go, oh, I can get a violin for $150, and they'll bring it in, and the pegs are made of some kind of crazy wood that I've never seen before, and
Hmm.
they don't stay in tune, and the bridge, sometimes they're even, if they get them from a really bad online place, they're in the bridge are even blank, they haven't even been cut,
Hmm.
and so
Hmm.
they won't stand up. The strings are obviously going to be way too high or low, but mostly high. And having the bridge cut right with all the right dimensions in the string height, very, very important. And just to make sure that the bridge is placed right. And then obviously the bow too, making sure that it's a strong stick so that it's not, going to bow out the wrong way, and make sure the horsehair is good and set right. So it's taut and you can tighten it up and actually just use it. So
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You mentioned a couple times having issues with instruments coming from online. What kind of things do you see when they come from online? And do you deal with this a lot in your current situation with your students?
well, I think every string teacher deals with this somewhat, and no matter what we do to try to educate our parents about looking for this type of instrument, they're always going to be looking for the best deal, and they are going to find what they think is the best deal. But buying an instrument is kind of like buying a pair of shoes. You're not going to buy a $10 pair of shoes because it's going to kill your feet.
Hmm.
Uh,
Right.
and there are certain places where you would go to buy shoes and other places where you wouldn't. So I think that regardless of, I mean, I'm in a pretty high SCS area, and my parents still like a good deal. So I still struggle with a few parents here and there every year. We bought an instrument and it's not from the rental store, it's not from a reputable string dealer, or even online has reputable string dealers, but it's from an auction site or from a discount store or something like that. And it's not really set up to make the students successful. So that's the challenge. But so I still do see that, even being in a pretty affluent area.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a certain set of qualities you look for in an instrument when you're recommending it to a student, or you're maybe looking at the inventory of
Hmm.
different music stores and you're comparing them? What do you really look for out of an instrument?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with just a general quality of workmanship across the instrument. We're talking about looking at the wood grain, the purfling. Is it inlaid purfling, or do they just paint it on?
Hmm.
So we're looking for like an inlaid purfling. We're looking for good flaming of the wood, and just you could tell kind of the workmanship, the way that the scroll was cut, the F holes, the way that they're shaped. Is it symmetrical? I've seen instruments very asymmetrical before. So there's just certain things like that. And the difference in the beginner instrument and the step up is going to be probably the quality of the wood, the way that it's made. We're talking about violins, but with a cello you may have a plywood top cello as opposed to a fully carved cello. So there's differences there, differences in the varnish, whether it's a lacquer, a thick varnish, which is a little bit more durable and can withstand some of the younger students bad habits or just lack of care. And then you get into the nicer instruments with a little better varnish and higher quality wood, and then you get better strings, moving from a steel string to nylon or what like a Perlon core, a
Hmm.
synthetic core string. That makes a big difference in the warmth of the sound. But then again, you're taking fine tuners off at that point. So the student has to be able to handle an instrument like that. If I definitely wouldn't give a beginner an instrument that has all those features and no fine tuners, because they're going to need those to be able to tune.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
When you're dealing with the instruments that the school owns, the things that like typically
Hmm.
basses, cellos, probably violas and violins as well.
Yeah.
What kind of repair issues do you run into the most, or what kind of issues in general do you experience with
Yeah.
strings that kind of set you back, maybe maybe a student's without an instrument for a day for something? What do you see the
Sure.
most?
I think the biggest thing for me is cello bridges. Cello and bass bridges. And bass bridges, I always get adjustable bridges, and I highly recommend those because, the larger the instrument, the more fluctuation you have in the wood and, depending on weather and humidity and everything that goes on with those. So for me, I always buy basses with adjustable bridges. So if it needs to come down, a few millimeters or up a few millimeters, you could loosen the strings and adjust those and raise and lower, which is really nice.
Hmm.
Obviously, there were back in the day they made cello bridges with adjusters on them, but I haven't seen those lately. So it's sometimes just depending on the instrument will be more temperamental. But cello bridges are my biggest thing,
Hmm.
and just so sometimes I have several cellos that have a warm weather bridge and a cold weather bridge, and I just put the instrument number on the bridge, and then I have to, it obviously comes with one bridge, but then when I have to have it repaired or adjusted, they cut a new bridge and I keep the old one, and then I can swap them back and forth. Sometimes I do
Right.
that. I do that a little bit.
Based on the
And
season?
yeah, yeah. And then the other thing that I'm always having to do is just repair bows. And I don't invest in a lot of expensive bows. I invest in some higher quality fiberglass bows that I think, get the job done for my students, but are more durable than the wood bows. And they're also a lot less, they're less expensive. I think you get a little bit better performance from a little bit nicer fiberglass bow than you do from a cheaper wood bow. And so what I end up doing is actually just replacing the bows every year. Well, not every year, but every few years, because to rehair a bow is about $60, and to buy a new cello bow is maybe $65, $70
Hmm.
at school price. So it doesn't make a lot of financial sense to rehair the bows, and there's the labor involved and all that. So I end up just buying bows. And one of the things I have done, and I've really enjoyed, and my students have appreciated, is when they come into my program, they get a new bow to use for school use, and we have a school rental fee and everything that students pay, but we put their name on it, and that's their bow. And
Hmm.
so hopefully they take care of the bow a little bit more. They'll loosen it when they're supposed to and treat it a little bit nicer. And for me, it's worked out really well that way. If every student, every cello and bass player has their own bow, and some of the students share instruments, but they don't share bows.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
actually, this year they haven't shared instruments at all.
Right.
I hardly have any students in my classroom face to face. I have very few.
Mm.
But in a normal year, we'll share instruments, but they have separate bows.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
When you're looking to purchase these instruments that the school owns, I'm curious what system you use to find the instruments, or what
Hmm.
certain qualities you look for in the instruments before making that decision as to what you'll have there in the school.
Yeah, we have a bid list that we have to purchase from,
Hmm.
but I've been able to be a part of making recommendations for that. So we're putting in some of the things I've already talked about, ebony fittings and a certain type of string and things like that. But when I'm looking for that, I'm purchasing an instrument that's off the bid list, which I can do with certain funds that I have. I'm always looking for a shop that's going to provide me good service as well, too, that has good luthier and basically provide a good service and high quality instruments. And over the course of time, you develop that relationship with the vendor. And I think that's pretty important.
So if you trust the vendor that they have the right instruments, you don't question as much what they have if they're selling it to you. You trust that they have good stuff, basically.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we have really great shops here in Atlanta, so we have our choice of places, and I try to share the wealth a little bit and purchase from different shops too,
Okay.
because I think it's important to support as many businesses as possible.
Okay. When students come to you, let's say some of your older students, and they've maybe musically outgrown the instrument they've been playing on, and it's time to get a nicer one. I'm curious, what kind of advice do you give these students when it comes to selecting an instrument, what qualities to look for the instrument, how to shop for them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, basing it on when they're ready. If they're comfortable tuning, then you can, recommend that maybe they get a nicer instrument, nicer strings, and they don't have the fine tuners if that's what they're looking for. One of the big things I also recommend, even with a more basic instrument, is a better bow, because
Hmm.
kids forget how important the bow is, and that's what makes our sound. So, and the bow can make an average instrument sound better if it's being played on with a cheap bow, or with a less quality bow. So I do recommend a bow upgrade too. String upgrade. I recommend string upgrades because a lot of the beginner instruments will have just a steel string, and I'll recommend a synthetic core string like Zyx or the Kaplan strings, or even for my viola players, I recommend the Helicore, which are stranded steel. And so I try to recommend some smaller things first before the instrument to see if that makes a difference. But definitely it's when they're ready and when they have the drive, because I always base it on the student's drive, and how much they really want to get better as well. So it's hard to convince parents to spend a lot of money if their student's kind of so-so or just not really into it 100%, or it's not their life, so.
Yeah. I'd like to dig into what you look for in a music store or a violin shop when it comes to where you send your students, or generally speaking, which ones you feel really support you the most.
Right. I always am looking for a place that's going to treat my students right, and give them a fair deal and give them a high quality instrument and give them great service. And then as far as a school relationship, I really appreciate when a store will offer me a great discount, whether it's, on just accessories, or I've had stores donate some things before, some, whether it be strings or cloths or rosin, doing some donations, but also just giving the schools a special deal, because obviously they know we're all on a budget and we're trying to get as much out as we can. So, as much as discount as they can give, we definitely appreciate. I try not to let any of that, influence my relationship in telling my students to go to a certain shop. The one thing that I really try to get them to do is to go to a string specialty store, because I have found, regardless of the string specialty store, they're providing a better experience for my students and higher quality repairs. That's not to say that a non-string specialty shop can't provide good quality repairs. It just, we have so many fine shops here that it's easy for my students to find one close.
Okay.
But that may not be in every city. So, for a student to drive 45 minutes to go look at instruments or get a simple repair done, it would be great if they could use their local shop, whether it's string specialty or not, that would have someone there to do the repairs and to make it a good experience for the student at a fair price too.
Yeah. You hear string teachers and players generally speak about violin shops versus school music stores. And so if you were to talk to a school music store who's trying to really up their level of service to orchestra teachers, what kind of advice would you give them to bring it a little closer to that violin shop in service that you were just referring to?
Yeah, I think what I have seen is, there's sometimes several of the employees just, really don't know the string instruments. And so my students that rent from some of our local music shops will come back and they play violin, but they were given a viola bow or things like that. So small things that, if you really knew that the violin bow has a square frog and the viola bow has a rounded part of the frog, those are some really simple things. But I think it's just maybe educating all of the employees so that they all know, what's going on and what to look for. I think that's a huge thing, and offering a good selection of products, a good selection of strings and accessories and literature and books, method books and whatnot, so that when a string player goes in there, they feel like, oh, they actually have some things for me. They have and several, whatever kind of models or lines of instruments they can carry or stock or be able to have there for students to try out. I think that's great too. I've gone into some music stores and the string instruments, like the bridges on backwards and the strings aren't tuned, and so just maybe like having it be ready for when a string player comes in that they want to try something, that the instrument's ready to go and you're not just looking at it, they can actually play it. Having the accessories ready for them to, like a shoulder rest ready for a violin player to come in and try out an instrument. I found that could be challenging too, as I've gone to some music stores and they just don't have the accessories ready, or that kind of thing.
That's great advice. I think a lot of shops, what you consider a school music dealer, where they carry violins and all the band instruments, I think a lot of them want to provide better service. But what you just said is really probably what they've been wondering for a while, is to how do we better service orchestra teachers. So that was great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you currently have school reps or ed reps come visit you in your current program?
I haven't had any visit really. I know that they visit the band, but I haven't had them come. And I don't know if it's because they don't think that I want them to come, or they think I'm just dealing with, string specialty stores. But that I haven't had any reps for actually pretty much in the whole time I've been in Alpharetta. When I was in Ohio, I always had reps come to my middle school, and it was actually nice because I would like, oh yeah, I need to get like 5, two D strings and 2 A strings for these instruments, and
right.
And when by them showing up, it was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like, could you hook me up and grab those for me? So they would bring them, in a couple of days or whatever. And so it was always a nice reminder that I was low on a particular string, or rosin or whatever it might have been. But those kind of things.
If you were to have a new ed rep walk into the classroom, I'm curious, what kind of advice would you give this ed rep to best service your orchestra program and kind of orchestra teachers in general?
I think it's always good just to have that good relationship, and it's not something you can do right away. It takes time to develop, but just getting to know the teacher as much as possible, showing that you care is important. Showing that you know your way around the products, and kind of how it works. I think I've had some younger reps that are maybe don't understand music ed, don't understand the music programs very well. So, and it's easy for a teacher to tell if the person really doesn't know what they're talking about.
Sure.
So, yeah. So it's just, getting to know the field, getting to know the community, and, asking like, okay, what method book are you using? What should we keep in stock? Those kind of things.
Is there anything else that you find is a challenge these days as a teacher? And I'm thinking specifically about what COVID has done to the education world and your program. I'm curious, what do you see going forward? I mean, we all know that COVID massively affected education, but how do you see your program coming out of it? And what do you see for the near future?
Yeah, I mean, for my program, I know that we've regressed some, and I know that next year, knock on wood, that we will be back to somewhat normal. We'll at least have students face-to-face, and there will not be this crazy virtual / hybrid option, because it's starting to drive all the teachers pretty crazy, trying to juggle your face-to-face students and your virtual students, and then the face-to-face students will get lazy and they'll say, "Oh, I'm staying home today." I'm like, that's not how this works, So, but I know we've regressed as far as just our level, our drive, our musicianship. So it's gonna be an uphill battle of just rebuilding. I think it's gonna take several years because I'm at the high school level, but I know and my feeder teachers have done an amazing job with their beginners, teaching them, line, most of them. But I know that there's going to be technical setup things that are going to need to be, worked on and retaught and drilled a little bit more, because they just didn't have that. They didn't have pedagogical touch. They didn't have the ability to get that instant, feedback that we always. That's what music teachers rely. That's what we do. We listen, and then we give that instant feedback, and we just don't have that. And I know, some of my students at home, like we're on Zoom, or we're on Teams. They're just not. Some of them aren't participating because they have their cameras off and they won't turn them on. And no matter how much I beg or say that I'm going to mark you absent without your cameras, they still don't care. So they probably care, but there are different issues. Every student has different issues with learning from home, but I just think that it's going to take some time to rebuild, and I hope that it's not a permanent thing. I hope that students are going to be hungry for these type of experiences because they've been without them for so long. We had our first group rehearsal about a month ago, and it was after school, and because I only have about 15% of my students face-to-face, so I have very, very small classes, which isn't what, the students signed up for.
Right.
And the rest of the students were at home, so I said, okay, we're going to prepare for our large group assessment. And, we're going to have 3 after-school rehearsals, and you have to come to at least one of them. And then we're going to do a recording day on this day. And if you come to one of the rehearsals, you can come to the recording day, and we're going to do a recording. We're going to play together. We're going to distance. And, I had a group of 40, which I was super happy with,
Yeah.
and another group of 25. My 5 orchestras I combined into 2 orchestras, and I was only able to get a little less than half of them to come in and actually play. But I will say it was an experience that just was kind of unforgettable. It had been so long, almost a year since we had played together, a year since I actually picked up a baton and conducted, and
It was a moment.
It was definitely a moment. And even though the level of music that we were playing was about 2 levels below where we normally play, it didn't matter at that point. What mattered was that we were together, that we were playing, we were making music, and I was able to stop them, and I actually heard them make mistakes, and we could fix things, and we could work on musical things like crescendos and dynamics and phrasing. And it's not just, I've been doing a lot of work with playing. We've been playing with accompaniment tracks, either ones that I find or ones that I make, and I feel like I'm a DJ sometimes rather than a conductor, teacher, So it was really nice to be able to do that. And I look forward to the fall and being able to start the school year, hopefully in a somewhat normal way, and just take the kids where they are and keep going and do what we normally do. And hopefully we'll be able to get back to where we were. And I think, like I said, hopefully the kids will be hungry for it. And this will be something that they won't take for granted,
Yeah. Do you think they'll have a new appreciation for music and playing together as a group surrounded by their friends?
I definitely do, and I definitely think teachers are going to have a new appreciation as well for not having to log on and teach students face to face and at home. A lot of us have been doing that hybrid, or completely virtual, and it's not very fun. It's not what any of us signed up to do as a job, and the students definitely didn't sign up to be playing on smart music or whatever they're using at home by themselves.
Certainly.
So
yeah.
We're ready. We're ready.
Yeah, we all are. We certainly all are. And I know a lot of music stores out there who are really supportive of their local schools and the music programs. A lot of them have been kind of at a loss as to how to support you as a teacher with such a unique setup where you've had to really just shut everything down. As things open up again and you go through that transition and that rebuilding, as you called it, is there anything that music stores or the music industry in general can do to help you come back, maybe faster and stronger?
I just think, like I said, being there to support us with what we need, getting it to us in a timely manner, being able to give us a break on stuff wherever it can be done. I think a lot of programs if they're going to have less students and they're going to have less funding, but a lot of the needs are very similar, even with less students. So I think just making sure that they're reaching out to support. What can we do for you? How can we help you? Those kind of things I think mean a lot to teachers.
Charles, we really appreciate your time and opening up to share what it means to be an orchestra teacher and things that are important to you. And I think a lot of the ed reps out there will really take a lot of this to heart and raise the bar of their service to orchestra teachers that they go out and visit every day.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I hope it'll be helpful. But I look forward to getting back to normal. And I think the teachers want it. I know the music stores do too. One of the shops I talked to, they said this year for every instrument that went out, we got 2 back, and I felt so bad to hear that. It's hard to motivate students without the face-to-face, without the concerts, the getting pumped up about things. We do a lot of social events with the orchestra too. Like a lot of students are in orchestra for social reasons, and we've been missing those things. So as the programs come back and the schools come back face to face 100%, it's going to definitely help the music stores and all the vendors out there. So we're going to get through this.
We will, and we'll do it better together. Like you said, we're all rebuilding.
Absolutely.
The students, the teachers, the music programs, and the whole music industry side of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we'll all look forward to a bright future.
Definitely.
Charles, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
We hope you found the information in this episode useful and something you can use in your everyday life as an ed rep. If there is a topic you'd like to learn more about and have presented on a future episode of EdRep Radio, or you'd like to give us some feedback in general, please email us at edrepradio@eastmanstrings.com. To learn more about Eastman Music Company, go to our website, eastmanmusiccompany.com, or give your Eastman rep a call. Thanks, and drive safe. We hope you found the information presented in this episode useful and something you can use in your everyday life as an ed rep. If there's a topic that you would like to learn more about and have presented here on Ed Rep Radio, or would like to give us some feedback in general, please drop us an email at edrepradio@eastmanstrings.com. Thanks for joining us, and drive safe.